We are live again on another Monday. Well, it's not Monday, it's Tuesday today. So, got you guys. So, if you were thinking it was Monday, it's not, it's Tuesday. So, welcome back to Landscaping to the Point. I am joined by my friendly host, guest host, lovely guy that he is, JC, which he is PB and JC. So, if you know what PB and JC is, you know what it is. So, what is going on, JC? Welcome back to the show. It's been a crazy week since last week. I don't know about you. I don't know if everybody's heard up. Welcome on Instagram. Welcome on YouTube. Welcome wherever you are watching us, or if you're listening to us. I want to thank you guys for listening and watching. Thank you guys so much. So, if you guys haven't seen my post today, go to Landscapes by Acme. If you've seen my post today, I literally had somebody call me. I was supposed to do a meeting today, which I got to do a meeting with her, but she called me up and said, "Hey, I'm sorry about what happened to your truck. We can reschedule the meeting. I know you're probably busy." And I called her back and I said, "Hey, did you look at the rest of the video? You'll see that there really was no damage to my truck. It was just a fake Christmas tree candy, like a Little Debbie." And she's like, "No, I didn't know that." And I'm like, "You need to watch the whole video. That's your whole problem. You're not watching the whole video. So go watch that video." But I've been doing a lot of stuff. If you guys have been following, I've been doing a push-up challenge it's been over, well, today is what, the 9th or 10th. So I've been doing it for almost 20 days straight now. So, because I started back in right before Thanksgiving. So if you haven't noticed, I'm doing some little push-ups, 20 push-ups a day. So hopefully you guys can come join me in it. JC, he's been doing all kinds of stuff. He's doing jiu-jitsu. He's doing all kinds of stuff. So I don't ask him to do 20 push-ups because he'd probably kick my butt on this thing. So, so JC, are you ready for today's topic? I wonder if all our people that are listening and watching are ready too.
Yeah, I'm ready for today's topic. We may have touched upon it in past podcasts before, but today we're going to go all in. And on top of that, I'd like to add that even though it's not Monday, it's Tuesday. Landscaping to the Point could pop up anytime, any place, anywhere. So, it's a kind of like a surprise little podcast. So if you catch it on time and if you're live with us, we'd like to thank you for joining us and get into today's topic. Make sure you comment. Make sure you ask us some questions. We're here all night long. Well, not all night long, but for a little while for the most part. Josh, I don't know where Josh is, but I think he's still stuck in the 90s. So, we'll leave him there. That's his happy place.
I think he is. I think he really is. I mean,
yeah.
He's still stuck on that AOL dial-up, which is from the 90s. So, I mean, he's still there. So,
yeah, I mean, he still plays outside until the street lights come on.
Yeah, and then his wife yells at him to come in, just like his mom did. So, I mean, maybe that's what he really wants. He wants to be back in the 90s,
I do too.
Yeah.
I envy that.
Yeah, I do too. So, we're going to go into the 90s. So, we got lots of stuff to talk about. I don't know whoever's watching, if you're from the 90s or you like 90s stuff. There was all kinds of good things back in the 90s. And Brightstone's throwing us a joke already. So, Brightstone, before we get into it, we're going to go ahead with your joke. What do you call an espresso with a cold?
An espresso.
What'd you think of this? You're going to laugh your ass off.
It's some kind of like name of a coffee. It's something with cappuccino.
Coffee.
Yeah,
like coffee. Yeah.
Coffee.
Oh, really, Brightstone? You gotta step it up. It's been a while, Brightstone, so you're gonna need to step it up, buddy.
I like it.
Great more stuff, but it was a good one. That was a good one, definitely. All right, so back in the 90s, we had a lot of stuff. We had one of the favorite thing that's still out there today is Super Soakers. Do you remember Super Soakers? Just literally, I remember my first Super Soaker. It sucked. It didn't do as much power as it does now, but man, it did the job by getting you wet. I don't know about you, JC.
It's
Hey guys, we just go out there with stuff. So
yeah. It's unedited, uncut.
that's right, unedited.
Unedited, cut, right? Live. That's
Yeah,
what happens when we're live.
that's live. This is live,
Super
guys.
Soaker,
So.
man. Thinking back of your childhood, I realized how much of a pain in the ass I was to my parents. Like I was a whiny little kid, I guess, But
Right.
anyways, when I was infatuated by something, I begged for it. I was one of those types of kids that begged for it. And, fortunately my parents were, they did the best they could. And they, when they could, they got me something. But anyways, going to Super Soaker, I had the Super Soaker 50, and it was the yellow one that had the green bottle on it and the orange tip. And yeah, I love that thing, man. I used to like hang outside I lived on a 3-decker, a 3-story apartment building. So I just like fill the water bottle and I'd squirt it from the porch, like at nobody, at nothing, just to have water fall down, and
Right.
but it was like the latest and great, like every kid in the 90s wanted a Super Soaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that, dude.
And they had different ones. They had the 50, I think, which is like one of the bottom ones. Then they had the 100. It was blue, and it had 2 bottles. It had a round one in the back, and then the regular one in the front. And then there was like another one. I forget the name of it, but it was like massive. Like it was like, like if the kid in the neighborhood had that, he was like the rich kid in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of them Super Soakers. Even today, there's some really good Super Soakers that are they're huge, and you're like, where did these come from and who keeps making these? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing on the ones that they had. Like you said, you had what, the 100 you said, or the 50?
I had the 50. I actually looked it up online now, and on eBay, like the original packaging one in the box, it's going for $250.
Jeez, dude, could you just imagine having that? I mean, man, that it's just amazing on how big they are.
Yeah.
Did you ever? You said one of the people had the 2000. Have you seen the 2000 before?
I can look that one up because that might.
That one was one that had a lot of power, and they actually banned it because when you shot some kids in the eye, you could almost destroy their eyes out, dude. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
It was huge, and it had a lot of power, and it didn't take that much to pump it up and just go at it, dude. I mean, it literally shot a lot of power out of there.
That's the one that the rich kids had.
Yeah, see, and now it's banned. It's literally, they banned it. But I mean, think about it. Think of all these other ones that are out there nowadays, dude. I mean, they had to probably go from the 50 on up to that, and then say, oh, okay, well, we got to change this up a little bit to make sure that people aren't getting hurt, So
there was one that had a backpack.
Yes, there was. There was one with a backpack. I remember that because I remember there was a kid in my neighborhood that had that one with a backpack, and we always didn't want to play with him because he had more water in his back. He could just keep going, dude. And I remember having the 50, and it was like, I'm gonna have to run back and get water like 4 times before he's done with that backpack.
Yeah, so that was the Super Soaker 300, and that came out in 1993.
Wow. Yeah.
1993. Some of you guys don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys online. Mac from Mac Landscaping, Brightstone's on it. Aaron's Lawn Care's on. We got Big Dave on there. So we got a bunch of guys that are close in age that know what we're talking about. So it's amazing. I don't know if you had one of these, but here's another one that I had, a starter jacket. Did you ever have a starter jacket? I remember asking my parents to get me a starter jacket for Christmas. So I got one. I don't know if you got one, and what was the team that you got if you had one? Do you remember?
That's the funny thing about it. Is like back then it didn't really matter what team you picked. Like,
right.
As long as you had that starter jacket. A lot of the popular ones were like the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
And all that.
That's what I had. It was the Charlotte Hornets, dude. I mean, I think the team you picked. Like, right. I think that was, what my parents found. You know what I'm saying? They just picked that one for me.
Yeah,
So,
and they were expensive back then too. I had regretfully, not regretfully, because back then the Kansas City Chiefs were not the Kansas City Chiefs of today.
no, they
Um,
weren't.
so I did have the black Kansas City Chiefs starter jacket with the red and yellow in the middle of the elbows, like the sleeves. And the reason why I had Kansas City was because I was a 49ers fan and I was a Joe Montana fan. And Joe Montana got traded at the end of his career to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
So I kind of just like followed him because I like Joe Montana. So, and plus I think it was like the only one that was like available at the time. So,
Right.
so I mean, it was perfect. It worked out. My parents ended up getting me the Kansas City Chiefs one.
Nice.
I had.
Yeah, I think there wasn't that many. I remember my dad saying that there wasn't many teams to pick from at that time, and they were like, okay, well, you get what you get, and it was like, I think it was just the excitement to have one, dude. And it didn't matter what team you had. It was just like, hey, I got one of these, because there wasn't many kids in my school that had starter jackets. So they were envy of you when you came over and you're like, hey, look what I got for Christmas, So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot there that, I think people were just amazed to have those at that point. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, everybody had them, but it didn't hit with the same type of swagger that if you bust that out right now, because
Right.
it's making a comeback, and like all these kids that were born in like the early 2000s, they look at that as like vintage retro, and they want to be the cool kids now that were rocking it like it's the first time anybody's ever done it. So yeah, it's that's where the trend started. But back in the 90s, it was just normal for everybody to have jump on that and have that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I was just looking real quick. A Charlotte Hornets starter jacket like I had is going for $340 on eBay right now.
Wow.
Just people that, like you said, people that want to be that 90s retro type, clothing are paying that kind of stuff. It's just amazing what we grew up with, which at that time was expensive. Don't get me wrong, it was expensive. But now it's just like people are wanting to buy stuff that we had to wear. And you're like, man, we had that, like it's just normal stuff that we had, our parents bought for us. So
yeah, you're not a trendsetter if you're thinking that you're going to buy a starter jacket today and wear. We set that trend. We set that trend, so they're following suit.
Oh yeah. Let's see. What else do we have what about, okay, Nintendo. Nintendo came out in the 90s. Do you remember Nintendo? I remember literally getting my first Nintendo on Christmas, and literally the game we had was the Duck Hunt, dude. And literally I sat up that Christmas playing it, and I got in trouble for playing it because literally I going around shooting it. My parents were sitting there watching me. Actually, my stepdad, and he was like, I said, shoot, I'm going to shoot his dick off. and my stepdad's like, what did you say? And I said, no, nothing. And he goes, I heard what you said. I really did hear what you say. Literally, I didn't get to play it for the next couple of days, but literally it was one of the best games besides Super Mario Brothers that came out that year. And I'll tell you what, I had that game too. And I enjoyed all those games that came out back then, because there was a lot of games back there that literally you played for hours on hours, man, just trying to finish the levels. And you were that kid that once you had one of those, you were that kid that everybody wanted to come over and play at your house. Like they wanted to come over and play Nintendo there. Like they didn't want to play outside no more. They wanted to come over to your house, So did you have one, JC? Did your parents get you one when you were in the 90s?
Yeah, eventually. So my older cousins, I remember the first time I played Nintendo was at my older cousin's house, and they just got one. And the first video game I ever played was Super Mario Brothers, the original. And I do remember Duck Hunt, but my cousin had The Legend of Zelda.
Ooh.
I remember it was like a gold cartridge, whatever.
Yep.
And he played that. But afterwards, yeah, we got the Nintendo. I was never good at video games, but I still played them. And we had a lot of games, man. We had, Super Mario 1, 2, and 3. Um, one of my favorite ones was Jaws. It
Okay.
was like it
Yeah.
was after the movie Jaws. Like that was a fun game to play. It was easy.
Right.
But a quick story. I remember it was like a Saturday once, and me, my mom, I'm sorry, me, my dad, and my sister. My dad was driving us to like the bakery to get some like snacks and stuff like that. And my dad found a backpack in the parking lot. He's like, "What the heck?" So he grabs the bag, and it was full of Nintendo games, marbles, like jacks, like playing cards and stuff. It was just dumped there. And
Wow.
it seemed like it was like some kid that was like probably running away from home or something like that,
Right.
and just left it there or something like that. We tried to find who owned it, but we couldn't. But we ended up just kind of keeping all those games, and that's where the majority of the games that we had came from. So we played a
Wow.
lot of Nintendo back in my day.
Yeah, I did too, man. I really did. Bright Soul says there's a new game, a Mario game for the Nintendo Switch called Bombo Blast. He says he plays it with his kids, and we have a running joke of how we're gonna blow each other up. Dude, some of these games are they're just amazing, dude. And there's so many games nowadays. It's ridiculous. And I think even back then there was a lot of games, especially coming out with a Nintendo, dude.
I
Um,
love the Mike Tyson Punch Out. That was my
oh yeah,
favorite.
dude, I love that. We played that game. I played it nonstop, dude, trying to beat some of these characters in there. And Mike Tyson was the best one I think you could ever get to play or try. I mean, and then try to beat him was just ridiculous. Trying to beat him, dude, there was
Next
no
to
way of
impossible.
beating him. Yeah, yeah, it was one of those ones I love playing too. I mean, there was tons of games on there. Kirby, I remember Kirby, Mega Man. Oh, Mega Man was just, dude, that was just one of the games that I love playing too. So, and then it wasn't many years after Sega came out, and then you were
Mhm.
like, you had the Sega and all that stuff, and you had Sonic and all that, and it was like, okay, wow. But man, there was a lot of games there that I enjoyed. But
I think if you think about it too, the 90s was kind of like pivotal for video games because starting in the 90s, you came in with the Nintendo, the regular Nintendo.
yep,
Nintendo was created in the 80s, but most people didn't get it until later in life.
right,
And then, like you said, you had the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendos. And then into the late 90s, like that within that relatively quick amount of time, you had the Nintendo 64. Nintendo
right,
64 came out in the 90s, late
yeah.
90s. Um, and it was like the technology back then was advancing so quickly. And I had a Nintendo 64. I had a regular Nintendo, then I had the Sega Genesis, and then from Sega Genesis we jumped to the Nintendo 64.
Tell you the truth, my father-in-law has one of the original Nintendos still. So, I mean, he's still got some of the games, and I tell you what, it's good to go back and play them, but it's hard to play them on our screens nowadays because it's all like squared. But it's nice to have and be able to play. But do you remember going to record stores and buying records or cassettes or CDs like when they came out? Like I remember buying tons of CDs in the 90s when they
Mm.
came out.
Um, Very rarely because it's not a sad story. We were poor, so
Right.
we didn't really have like a lot of time or chances to go to records. So we did go every now and then. And I remember like they'd have the headphones in the aisles, and you could like put the
Yep.
headphones on and sample some of the music that was there. Um, the first cassette album that I had was was it was it CNC? No, it wasn't CNC Music Factory. It was a single,
Okay.
and it was a rap group from California called Lighter Shade of Brown.
Okay.
It's crazy that I remember that.
That is
It
that
just goes
is
to show you how little records or music I was able to buy. But I loved going to a record store. I remember like not knowing really what rock music was, and I saw the cover of the Aerosmith album, with the cow and the udders, and I was like, what,
Right.
so like, what the heck is that? Like, and then the Guns N' Roses spaghetti,
Oh yeah.
album, remember that? Yeah, record stores are pretty cool back then.
Oh yeah, they were, dude. I think I know I bought a lot of CDs, and I tell you what, I still have a lot of CDs, and we had a lot of cassettes, and we ended up selling them. And I mean, we made some good money on cassettes back then too, not too long ago. But like, it was just interesting to be able to go and buy them. I think I had a lot of single ones to where there was just like one or two songs on them.
Mm.
And that was just because it was cheaper sometimes. You only had so much money, so you go in there and be like, okay, for $4, I'll buy this instead of buying the full CD. So for the full cassette. So yeah.
Do you remember like if you had a nice, like a big group of friends, one person would buy the cassette, and then you'd buy the blank cassettes, and then you could you make copies of it, and then that's how you kind of like shared it with your friends. It was like back in the day, pirating back in the day,
Right. I remember buying blank ones and trying to pirate it off the radio station.
The radio.
Trying to just get it just right, know that because the DJ would be like, oh, coming up next is, Aerosmith, and you'd hurry up and oh yeah, I gotta do this, So he'd be still talking, and you're like trying to get it just right. So you'd always be at the end of what he was saying, and then you'd be like, yeah, and you'd have it, and you'd be like,
you only had that one opportunity to do it, man.
Yep. Yeah, that's the only way you had it, and that's and like you said, then somebody would come over and be like, I got this cassette, and be like, okay, I'm gonna copy it. I want that cassette. So you'd end up with like all these ones that had different songs on it, because you would be like, okay, I remember deleting some stuff and then putting it back on to different ones, because it was like, okay, I don't want to get more cassettes, but I want this song instead. So you'd end up deleting stuff off. Or
correct me if I'm wrong, but if you had an album on a cassette and you wanted to make a copy of it, you had to listen to the entire thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Like fast forward, copy it.
Yeah, you had to listen. If somebody gave you a cassette and it was like song 3 or something, you had to listen to song 3 just to copy it. But then if you went past it, you had to listen to it all the way up to the end of the song 2, and it took some time, because I mean, yeah, you could fast forward it, but then you had to, rewind it just to get to the end and restart it all over. So I mean, yeah. It was a lot of time on trying to copy a couple of songs off a cassette. So
you ever make a mixtape?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, with a lot of different songs on it, and there was always where you're right in between. You were either a little too fast on starting it or a little too slow on starting to catch the next song that you wanted. So, it was one of those things. What about 90s cars? There's a lot of 90s cars. I know you're a car guy. So
that's my topic.
Yeah. So what about 90s cars? I want to hear what your best 90s cars was.
Oh, man. I think, so, all right, let me paint the picture a little bit. So my family was just my father, my mother, my oldest sister, and I. And back then, family cars, they would be sports sedans. Like, you would justify that as a family car, like 2-door coupes or something like that. But anyways, my parents, well, more my dad, bought a 1991 Chevrolet Cavalier Z24. I wish I still had that car, because back then that was one of the rare trims. It was the sport package Z24, 3.1 fuel injection. I know I'm getting into the schematics of it, but it was an awesome car back then. Nobody had it. Nobody had that car. It had the ground effects kit on it, like from the factory. It was white. It was a cool looking car. But we would squeeze in that thing as kids. My parents weren't practical. You would think that they'd buy like a 4-door car so that we could all fit in there. But no, we had to buy the cool car, and we squeezed in the back. Yeah, I mean, and I think that was super early 90s, of course, 1991.
Right.
Once 1993, 94, 95 came out, that's when the tuner, trend started coming into things with the Civics and and all those other things like that. Camaros, Z24s, Z28 Camaros. Yeah, it's just, your Honda Preludes, your Honda Civics, your Honda Accords. That was the early mid 90s, and that kind of started that car trend.
Do you think that because it came out then, that's why it's one of the bigger cars on like the Hondas? Like, do you feel like those are why most people want those type of cars to race in and stuff? Because it was like one of those cars that came out that had the speed from back then?
Like, are you saying like why they're so popular now?
Yeah, because of back then they were so popular because of the speed on them. Because I remember they had a lot of speed, and it could get up and go. A lot of the Honda Civics and all that. So
yeah, it's because they were light cars, lightweighted cars. But yeah, I was never a Honda guy, but my first car that I was able to drive was, and that was what, 2000, 2001. So I was, that's into the 2000s. Was a 1990 Honda Civic.
Okay.
But yeah, to your question, to your point, yeah, they became popular because they were light, and even though they didn't have a lot of horsepower, because they were light, they were quicker off, to dart off,
Right. I think they're all pretty good cars. And I think some of them, like a lot of them are good collector's editions if you got something like that, because they're not around anymore. And I don't think it's harder to find parts for those, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What about
prices have gone up too?
Oh, yeah. The prices on any car has gone up. I remember back then buying my first car, and I think I paid $500 to my cousin for my first car. And back then, I don't think she paid more than like $4 or $5 grand for the car originally. So, prices have gone way up from when, now, compared to that back then. So, yeah. What about car stereos? Do you remember any of the car stereos that your parents had in the cars and how they were back then?
So we didn't have one as a family until later. Like the car that we had, it was the factory stereo, so we didn't really have to have one of those. But yeah, I do remember like my older cousins would have like those the JVC, detachable face radios, and have that little that case that you carry with you and put it in your pocket so that no one would steal your radio from your car. The Sonys, the Pioneers, the Kenwoods were huge.
Oh yeah.
Kenwoods was like the brand back then.
Yeah. I remember one of my cars back then had the detachable face, which, like you said, you had to put it in the case and literally carry the case around when you got out. And then I had another one that literally it flipped up and you literally pulled the whole unit out. So it like went in there and you had to and you're like, what do I do with it? Because it's literally like that tall, you're trying to like carry this around and you got like this mini suitcase around, and I think I turned around and changed that over to the detachable face because I was like, what? Why would I carry the whole car stereo around? Who's going to steal my whole car stereo out? It was like, come on. But yeah, back then, a lot of those were more expensive. You put in woofers, you put in, all kinds of stuff in there. So it was like you wanted to keep the stereo because you're like, somebody's going to steal my stereo if I don't, because you put so much money into the radio and all the speakers and stuff. So, it was a lot different back then, definitely. But
yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. So what other trends from the 90s do you remember? I know we talked a lot about it before, but anything that you else can pull up? I know JC, it's amazing how we both have been through the 90s, and a lot of people have, but it's a lot of do you feel like, here we go. Here's a good question for you. Do you feel, because like now 90s clothes are coming back, do you feel like the trends with the car stereos and all that will come back?
That's a good question. The trends with the cars, no, I don't think for the cars because
Okay.
the technology has advanced so much on those. I think guys like our age want to go back and buy the cars that they had in the 90s.
Well, yeah, definitely.
But the generation now doesn't want a car, from the 90s, unless it's like, unless it's like a Supra or something like that.
Right, right. Something that you're going to collect, and it's nice, good power on it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
I can't see a lot of that stuff coming
Lo-
back. I mean, there is a lot of trends coming back with the clothes and stuff, but otherwise, yeah, I don't see a lot of that coming
I feel kids nowadays, even though that they go and try to jump on some of the 90s trends, they're still the kids that want the up to date new age BMW or the new Toyota Supra, which is a BMW.
Right.
They want Hellcats and things like that. So I think
Yeah.
someone like you and I would want the Supras. We'd want the '86 Corollas. We'd want the Civics. Things like that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, guys. So we've touched on 90s so far today. Let's get into some other stuff. Got one more joke I want to go off of here from Brightstone, and then we'll jump into some other business stuff. So, what's the best breakfast cereal to eat in the winter?
Frosted Flakes.
You got it, man. JC got it. He wins it all today, guys. So he wins it all. So
that was more of a riddle.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely was. So all right. So guys, we're coming to the end of the year here. So a lot of you guys are ready and already done with certain seasons. Some guys are still in it. Some guys like me are in the middle of it because we've gotten snow and we've got continuous snow. So how do you, JC, if you were in this type of game still, how would you deal in between seasons like this? If you're like in between a season and you're like literally couldn't get half of it done, but you're stuck because you're into now snow, but you have still leftover work.
But I'm not in the snow removal business.
Yeah, let's say you're not in the snow removal, you're into like back in the mowing and stuff like you were, and you didn't get all your cleanups done or any of some of your landscaping jobs. What would you do?
Man,
Would you wait?
It depends because I think a lot of maybe some of your clients thought that you'd be able to get that work in prior to the winter, and I think that could be a bad look on your business if you didn't have the time to get to them, and now there's layers of snow on top of their leaves. I think the first thing I would do is communicate with my clients, reassure them like, hey, listen, I know we weren't able to get out this year. I'll be sure to, maybe once spring comes around, make them a priority, get them all cleaned up and everything. I don't know what the conditions are outside, but if I was able to kind of do some type of cleanup work, I'd make an appearance and try to, keep up with it. But I think also too now, like this time of the year is time where you do want to like look back at how your business year was, jot down the things that you were content with and write down the things that you weren't happy with that you could have done better. And now you got to consider tax season. You got to prepare for tax season. So you got to get your numbers right, make sure that, know what your earnings were for the season, so that you could kind of know where you're at and, plan ahead for the next following season, making sure that your numbers, your books, everything, are legit. Everything's, and it gives you just good overview or summary of how your season was. So as quick as it ends, it's gonna, before it's gonna start back up again.
Right. I mean, it's literally for us. It's literally, if you think about it, it's like I think I edited it up the other day. It's like 15 weeks before we go back out and start doing stuff. So if you really think about it, yeah. If you're in any type of this type of business, depending on where you are in the United States, I mean, you're looking at like probably I'd say 8 to 15 weeks where you're not going to have lawn care. So you have to figure out what you're going to do. And then at this point, like you're saying, JC, I think it is good time to get your stuff together for taxes. It's a good time to look at your books and say, if you are short on stuff, like what do I need to do next year to adjust to make sure that, this time next year I'm at that point. It happened to us this year to where we were, behind on stuff, but the only reason why we were behind is because a lot of leaves didn't fall. So, and I think a lot of customers that we've talked to realize that, there's a lot of stuff that comes down. And then when it did come down, it came down so fast and so much that it's playing a game of like trying to catch up. And, they realize this, and a lot of our customers, we try to do twice. So we almost got through everybody's the first time, and some we did twice because of, we kind of get started on some of them early. So a lot of the customers realize that. And I think that's a good thing that you, like you said, communicate with your customers and let them know what's going on. But at this time of year, you want to make sure that you're set up for next year, see what you need to do for next year. And then also look at your numbers, see where you were at, see if you were, if you track your hours and you track everything else that you have, see if you're in that range of where you're going to make profit. You don't want to be at a spot to where you're making, negative on a loss on every job. You want to make sure that you're making it a profit and making it worth your while to be out there, because I'm not thinking at this point you should know your numbers. And then if your first year, yeah, it was a good year. Every year is good for everybody. Sometimes you have some bad times, and that's normal, but you got to look at your numbers throughout the year. And if you can't this time of year, when you got a little bit of a slowdown, a little bit of a break, even if you're down in Florida, like a lot of the guys that watch us and listen to us, they still have time to do this. They got a break. They're not cutting every week. They're cutting every other week. So they're taking a little bit of time to do other stuff and realize where their numbers are. And I think that's a good thing to do. So
yeah, that's the only way it works. You have to make sure you know what your numbers are. Because
I mean, if you're not, then you're like Josh. You're sitting at home with AOL. So I don't think you want to be like Josh with AOL, do you guys? So just making a joke on him, Josh. He's probably listening to us on YouTube right now because we have some people on YouTube. So he's probably listening to us on YouTube. But I think any point of a business, every year you need to look at your numbers. And I think that's one of the good things is that that because at that point you can realize what you need to adjust on. And like I've been trying to do is we track our hours. We try to track a lot of the work we're doing and seeing how long we're at certain jobs. So that way the next year we can say, well, does this one need to go up so much? Does this one find where it's at? And try to keep going to where we're making a profit on some of the jobs that we're doing. So, and you want to make sure you're making a profit at the end of the year. So, JC, you got anything to add to that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of a year-long strategy. It's you should kind of always know where you're at. And the second that you don't, get back, set yourself up so that where you stand currently. It's you always have to analyze, you always have to assess, you always have to make adjustments, make changes. I don't think I've ever heard anybody that's ever said that they had a perfect season.
No. I mean, yeah, you have good seasons, but you're never gonna have a perfect season, really. Yeah. I mean, I know some bigger guys that got tons of crews and lots of guys, and I've never heard any of them say they've had a perfect season where nothing went wrong. Everything was perfect across the board. Every guy's making what they should be making per hour. I've never heard anybody ever say that they had a perfect season.
Yeah, and if they are, they're lying because they have a false sense of reality.
Right.
But yeah, and if you want to grow, that's what you have to do.
Right. Another thing this time of the year is a good thing to look at your marketing. Look at what you need to do to market and where you want to market. Figure out where your target people are going to be at, or your target area. Some people, like to have areas like us. We like to stay in a certain area for service. So we kind of like to know where we're going to be at and what we're going to market for. So if you're marketing for mowing, decide on, where you're going to do it at. keep track of where you're putting it in and what you're putting out. If you're putting out, ads on Facebook or Google or wherever you're putting ads out, or even if you're doing door hangers, keep track of where you're putting them at, so that way you can see what your return on investment is on that too. So that's always a good thing to do. Right now is a perfect time. Really, I mean, yeah, it's December, okay, but it's a good time to get that stuff together, get it all ready, so that way once January comes, you get out there and you start pushing it. Push it end of January, push it, come March. It's the best time. Why wait around to market for any type of business? And really, you should be marketing all the time. But one of the things we do is, we go on a lot of word of mouth, and from that point on, we just kind of go off of that. But we do push flyers in the spring, so I think that's a good time to do that. JC, what's the best place to put your advertisements at?
I know some people start in the spring. I think this, like, the holiday season is the perfect time, and send cards, like holiday cards, that are an advertisement for your business. Happy holidays from so-and-so lawn care company. We'd love to service your lawn next spring. This is our information. Like, if you could do stuff like that. I mean, there's never a wrong time to send out your marketing. If you get a chance, any bit you can. But yeah, what'd you say? Strategies for marketing?
Yeah.
Like the best way to do it?
Yeah. What's the best way you think?
I think everybody's gonna agree, word of mouth. I think we're all there. That's the purest form of marketing is going to.
I think it's one of the cheapest forms, really, if you really think about it. It's the cheapest form. I mean, if you get one of your customers to give your name out, that's going to get out there more, and you're not paying for that. You're doing service for that person, and that person's recommending you because you did a good job on it, or you did good customer service, whatever it is, they're recommending you for that same service. And it's at that point, it's your choice to get out there and talk to them people and say, hey, thanks for, recommending me. And this is, what we can do for you, for the new customer. So that's one of the best things. Go ahead, JC. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, word of mouth, everybody agrees on that. It's the best form. It's the most genuine. People are going to trust their colleagues, their acquaintances, their friends, their families than anybody. So as long as you build that reputation, you're good there. If you're going into new territory, new neighborhoods, I'm a big fan of the door hangers. Again, know how to do things the right way. Don't be leaving stuff in people's mailboxes, because you shouldn't be doing that. Community centers, put flyers up in your community centers, your libraries, they usually have like a cork board, coffee shops. I don't know how expensive it is, because I've never done it, and I don't want to recommend it because I don't know how well it works, but there is you could consider maybe like your diners. They use the placemats. I know Josh talked about that before in the past. I don't know about newspapers anymore, because I don't know anybody that really reads the newspapers. I know more elderly people do. So, back in the day, you used to look in the yellow book for services. I don't know how relevant that is now with the internet. Again, 90s reference, right?
Yes, 90s reference on that one.
Yeah,
and the paper. I mean, that's all 90s, I would say.
Yeah. So let me sidetrack here a little bit, because I know to do that. So earlier today for lunch, I had Dave's Hot Chicken. Dave's Hot Chicken. Is that what it's called? Dave's Hot Chicken, whatever.
Dave's Hot Chicken, yeah. Nashville Hot Chicken, Dave's.
Yeah. You've had it?
Yeah.
So it was the second time I've ever had it, and being bored, I researched it, and I was watching YouTube videos on how it started. And it was like, 2 or 3 guys that used a popped up tent in a parking lot and started, making this chicken. The guy, had a culinary background, but he was a broke college graduate. And, that turned into a multi-billion-dollar company. So it just, I guess my point is, you don't have to have all this expensive, fancy means of marketing, like you can just start small and simple, and people are going to appreciate the work that you do. And as long as you could display that and show that, it's a start. It's better than no advertising.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you could create a lot from nothing. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. Just, introduce yourself, go around, go to like public, town events, like craft fairs, or they do like music at the town hall or something like that. And people, during the summertime, and like just pass out flyers,
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing you can do, is just to get your name out as much as you can. I mean, one of the things I'd like to do is try to get my name out with like BNI groups, or with, businesses that, want to meet with people, like, realtors. Realtors are a good one to do, especially in our lawn care business. Even if you're into like construction and stuff, work with a realtor. Even painters are good for that. They're always looking for somebody, because they're always out there trying to sell a house. And a lot of times that realtor might need something done, or, he might have a client that, has that overgrown bush blocking their front door. And, that realtor doesn't want that. That realtor wants that front door to be seen. So they're going to contact, whoever they can to get out there and trim that stuff. And even, even if it's not getting done, then, by having that name to that realtor, your name could be passed on to the new people that come in and might want services. So realtors are good ones. Like you said, job boards. Look for job boards. Look for any kind of community board that, will let you put up your postcard, or wherever, your business card, whatever it is. I think that's one of the good things to do too. So get your name on your truck if you can. I've seen a lot of that, but then I've seen a lot of that to where a lot of guys are going around without their name because they're getting too busy, and then they can't handle the work. So they're trying to make sure that their name's not on the truck. So, but I think it's good to have the name on the truck if you can. Also get your stuff logoed up, get your shirts logoed up. Make sure you got, your name on your shirt, or on your hat, or on your sweatshirt. So that way, people know who you are when you're out there, because I think that looks professional. Plus, it's also giving your advertisement out there. I like to wear my work sweatshirt. I have one work sweatshirt that is so nice and new that I only wear it out when I go out certain places. So literally, I'm advertising as I'm walking through stores and stuff, just walking around, because it's like, hey, it's a nice sweatshirt. Hey, I'm going to get my name out there as much as I can. And that's free too, because you're just walking around with it. So,
what's some marketing that doesn't work?
Ooh, there's a lot of things I think that don't work. Cold calling anymore. I think cold calling doesn't work anymore. It used to work a long time ago, on and off. But I think that's one thing that doesn't work at all anymore. Just calling somebody up and saying, hey, do you need your lawn cut? Door to door, I think, is iffy. Door to door is like 50-50, because I don't think a lot of people want to talk to somebody coming up trying to sell them anything. What do you think?
Cold calling?
Yeah.
Nobody has the patience for that.
Yeah. I feel like they just don't want to deal with it.
No, because they get so many advertisements. Someone wants to be bothered with it,
Right.
Yeah.
I think, and one of the things in our area that sometimes I notice it's starting to get oversaturated, and a lot of people are just throwing them away, is like, we have mailboxes at the street. And so they have like a paper thing underneath for paper, which is just kind of, a lot of companies throw ads in it. So I see in the spring, a lot of companies go through and put them in there. And I see a lot of people that just take them out and throw them in the garbage, or just leave them in there for months, because it's like, they don't want to deal with these ads. They don't want to deal with getting, 500 flyers from different companies, just, because they're looking for work. A lot of people, when they want work, will find out how to get somebody to get that work, so, and that's where it comes into word of mouth as one of the better ones. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Cold calling is one. Trying trying to think one that I think is not that I've seen that it hasn't been doing. I just think it just depends on what your business is, because it's like I said, there's certain times of the year where if somebody's looking to change on, they'll find a way to find you. They'll look at, and
You there? I don't know if I'm still live, if you're still live, but
I feel like a lot.
oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Yeah,
I don't know where
it
you went,
froze
but
for like 2 minutes. Same thing.
here I go. Hey, I'm back. Who knows?
Yeah. You keep cutting out.
But okay, well then I guess we'll end the podcast, guys. So it was a real fun day today.
Oh boy.
I've been on a couple meetings and podcasts. What's going to happen? Frozen.
You're there. You're back now.
Singing Frozen, because they keep getting froze. But anyways, guys, thanks for all listening to us. Send us your messages. Thank you guys for coming on Instagram, on YouTube, Twitch, and listening to you guys. Thanks to our sponsors, Cujo, Pro Parts Direct, and Awesome Candle Company. Thank you guys for sponsoring this show every week and continuously sponsoring us. And I want to thank JC for popping on with his PB and JC. And I think we've had a great talk, guys. Come with us next week. We'll be back next week. Maybe. I don't know. I'll be in Florida next week, so maybe we can get some people from Florida to come on. I don't know. We never know. So, but JC's looking at me like, "What? Where are you going?"
No, we need a guest host.
We need a guest host.
Yeah.
Yes, we do need a guest host. We need to get a guest host on here. I'd love a guest host besides us. So maybe we could get a guest host on. That would be cool. We'll get a guest host on here. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you could be the guest host. So definitely contact me if you would like to be on our show.